Today, I'm going to be making custom Magic the Gathering cards around Scott Pilgrim. And before I begin, a quick spoiler warning for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and the entire book series. Scott, Jobless Basis, is a 3/3 legendary human bard for 1 red and a green with Bread Makes You Fat. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token. If this isn't the first time this ability has resolved this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Scott, Jobless Basis instead. And has 1 red, green, and tap. Scott, Jobless Basis, fights target creature. If that creature dies, double the number of +1/+1 counters on Scott, Jobless Basis. Scott, of course, is our titular protagonist, and his goal is to fight Ramona's 7 evil exes. To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I gave him a fight ability on his activated ability where you can tap him to fight another creature, kind of showing the idea of him fighting one of Ramona's evil exes. And after each fight he grows stronger, developing more emotionally but also physically like a video game. And to represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so you can double the amount of +1/+1 counters on him if you're able to win the fight. I also gave him an ability based on the iconic quote, "Bread makes you fat." To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so when another creature enters the battlefield, you make a food token, representing him making garlic bread for Ramona. And then if it triggers again, you put a +1/+1 counter on Scott instead, representing him getting quote-unquote fatter. Ramona, Subspace Traveler, is a 7/7 legendary human for 5 green and a blue, and has Subspace Highway. You can pay 1 and a blue to tap. Ramona, Subspace Traveler's owner, gains control of it. Any player can activate this ability. And she has, when she enters the battlefield, if you cast it, target opponent gains control of it. Then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal 7 creatures. You may put 1 creature revealed this way onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Ramona, of course, is Scott's love interest throughout the series, and she's a bunch of quirks to her, one of the most important being her 7 evil exes, and that's represented with her enter the battlefield trigger, with you drawing 7 creatures, each representing one of her 7 evil exes, and you put one of those creatures onto the battlefield, representing one of the fights that usually happens at the climax of one of the books, or at certain parts throughout the movie. Additionally, I gave her the Subspace Highway ability, making it so you don't gain immediate control over her, and instead you have to gain control of her again by activating her, representing how she's able to move between subspace highways, kind of like how you're able to exchange her between players' control. I also made it so an opponent would gain control of Ramona initially, considering you are getting an X onto the battlefield, so you wouldn't necessarily be fighting on the same side initially. But of course, this is Magic the Gathering, there has to be some advantage to playing a 7/7. But it does also make that ability very powerful, allowing you to essentially slam a creature onto the battlefield, no matter the mana cost. You could cheat something very powerful into the battlefield like a Blightsteel Colossus. This could be super fun in a format like Commander where you can make deals with your opponents. Wallace, Witty Roommate, is a 2/3 legendary human for 1 blue, red, and a white with haste. And when Wallace enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. You can also pay 1 white, blue, and tap. Until end of turn, target opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, and all creatures that player controls has their power become 1. Wallace is of course the best character in Scott Pilgrim, being Scott's roommate and being the wisecracking, lovable character that we all know and love. To represent him in Magic the Gathering, in his first ability, I made it so you gain control of another creature with a classic Threaten style effect to reference the fact that he's constantly stealing Stacy Pilgrim's boyfriends from her. Then his second ability is to reference his extreme sarcasm, how he's able to take the wind out of almost anybody's sails. To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so you can essentially negate another player's powerful effect by activating it whenever you have the chance. So if a player is going to draw a bunch of cards, you can make it so they're only able to draw 1, or if somebody's about to swing out with a really big creature, you can make it so their power is only 1. This is a super cool defensive tool, or you combine it with something like Wheels to really strip your opponent's hands and take them out of the game. Kim, Indifferent Drummer, is a 3/2 legendary human bard for 2 red and a white and has haste. And we are Sexpa Bomb. Whenever Kim, Indifferent Drummer attacks, attacking creatures get +X+O, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Kim is of course the drummer of Sex Bomb, and one thing she does whenever they're about to start a song is yell the classic to represent kind of a way to energize the rest of the band and get them ready to play. To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so she boosts the power of all of our attacking creatures, essentially giving the idea that attacking creatures are the members of the band. Matthew Pattel, first X is a 2/3 human warlock for 4 blue and a red with, when Matthew Pattel, first X, enters the battlefield, if you cast it, create 4 1/1 blue illusion demon creature tokens with, when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. And whenever Matthew Pattel, first X, attacks, deal X damage to any target, or X is the number of demon tokens you control. And then you can pay blue and a red to create a 1/1 blue illusion demon with, when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Matthew Pattel is the first evil X that Scott fights, and his main ability is to summon these demon hipster chicks and cast fireballs from his hands. To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so when he enters the battlefield, you make 4 of these demons, just like how he does in the movie. Additionally, to represent his fireball effects, I made it so that whenever you attack, you can deal damage equal to the number of demon tokens you control. Then of course he does have the ability to make more, so I made it so you can activate him to make more 1/1 demon tokens if you need to, making his second ability even stronger. Todd, vegan basis, is a 6/6 legendary human bard for black, green, and has flying, vigilance, protection from all colors, and when Todd, vegan basis, enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. When Todd, vegan basis, attacks, defending player may have you create a food token. If they do, untap Todd, vegan basis, and remove it from combat. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more food, sacrifice Todd, vegan basis. Todd is of course the third X that Scott fights, and the most important part about him is that he's vegan, giving him superpowers. To represent this in Magic the Gathering, I made it so he is flying, vigilance, and protection from all colors, giving the idea that these are the superpowers that he has. Additionally, I made it so when he enters the battlefield, you can destroy up to 1 target creature an opponent controls, referencing the fact that he hits knives for no good reason when they first meet her. Additionally, I made it so when he attacks, you can remove him from combat by having him create a food token. This is to represent the idea that he's cheating on his vegan diet by having a kind of desecration demon-esque effect where your opponent can have you remove him from combat. And to reference the food thing specifically, if you control 3 food at the beginning of your end step, you have to sacrifice him, referencing the idea that he loses his vegan powers from the vegan police after he has 3 non-vegan products. I think he's super strong and a cool evolution of the classic desecration demon style effect. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out my other video right over here where I made custom Magic the Gathering cards based on regular show.